Well, good evening. I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome to Nashville. The saying goes, if you can't join them, fight them. Spartacus leading the rebellion against the Roman Empire. Well, now in 2025, it's Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries leading the rebellion against Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Schumer calls President Trump's border policy a gross abuse of power and a lawless act, and the Ukraine peace negotiations doing Putin's dirty work. Elon Musk's government efficiency department is a hostile takeover. But it doesn't stop there, because just as they did leading up to the election, the liberals are now trying to use the courts to stop the president, whether the law is on their side or not. Instead of offering policies, they've taken to what I would call the policy of litigation. So given that I'm a pastor and not a lawyer, we've invited the senior legal fellow and election law reform manager at the Heritage Foundation to join us tonight. Hans von Spakovsky, welcome to our show.
Alan, thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with the frantic attacks on the Department of Government Efficiency. I find it kind of stunning to watch the Democrats trying to take on the overwhelming waste in government spending. Joe Biden could have done it, and he didn't. And it seems that all Mr. Trump and Elon Musk are doing is to try to put the money that we pay in taxes back in our pockets and begin to pay down the $36 trillion of debt. Listen to some of the panic from the left.
Every time you hear DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, you just remember it is the Department of Government Evil.
This is like a bank robber trying to fire the cops and turn off the alarms just before he strolls into the lobby.
So we will see you in Congress, in the courts, and in the streets.
They are threatening court, but do they have any actual legal path for trying to stop the elected president?
Well, they certainly have been exercising it, and yeah, they have gotten some injunctions and orders from the lower courts. I think ultimately, though, when this finally gets to the Supreme Court, Trump is going to win on most of these cases. I mean, just a quick example. As you know, we've had a federal judge in Manhattan tell the State Department that they have to pay out $2 billion in USAID money, and they have to do it immediately. Well, how does a federal judge believe that he's got the legal authority to order the president to make a payment, particularly foreign aid payments, and to make them within 36 hours? Yeah, the Congress certainly appropriated a certain amount of money of foreign aid, which the State Department can give out. But they didn't put in deadlines. They didn't put in where exactly it goes. That's up to the executive branch to decide. And in this particular case, the executive branch has temporarily suspended payments. This judge doesn't have the legal authority to do that. And you notice, Alan, where did they sue? They sued in Manhattan, not in Washington, D.C., where the State Department is located. Now, why would they do that? Venue shopping. They went to Manhattan to get this very liberal federal judge, someone who in the past, before he became a judge, made all kinds of anti-Trump statements. So, what do you expect? Yeah, exactly what we got.
Well, it's become quite obvious that the left has been using the taxes we pay as their personal piggy bank for buying favors to get reelected. Now, I know plenty of Republicans have done the same thing, and you've written about it extensively, going back decades. Tell us how DOGE fits with what's been tried before.
Yeah, a lot of people I heard say, oh, this is unprecedented. It's never happened before. That's completely wrong. In fact, Eisenhower in 1952 ran on a platform that the government was engaged in all kinds of wasteful spending. After he got elected, he appointed his own committee of 3 men to take a look at this. One of them was his brother. Another one was the head of the Civil Service Commission. And the third was the 1952 equivalent of Elon Musk, Nelson Rockefeller, a very rich businessman. And Eisenhower was hoping that he could use what made him successful in business into the federal government. So the idea this hasn't been done before is just foolish. That committee made a lot of recommendations, but it did not go far enough. DOGE is actually doing the kind of things that need to be done.
You know, it's easy to understand why a judge who was appointed by President Biden might try to throw up a roadblock on Trump and Elon Musk. But help me understand how or why that gets to the Supreme Court.
Well, when he issued his temporary restraining order, that's what the federal district court judge in Manhattan did, and the Court of Appeals refused to stop it, they did file an emergency appeal, that is the Trump administration, with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court refused to act, 5-4 decision, saying that they were not going to act on it, on the substantive issue, until this had worked its way through the lower courts. There was a very strong dissent written by Justice Alito, joined by several of the other justices, saying that he was stunned by the majority's opinion, and in essence saying that a federal district court judge does not have the authority under the Constitution to dictate to the president his actions, particularly when it comes to making these kind of payments. And in fact, paying out $2 billion that if ultimately the Supreme Court gets the case and decides that it shouldn't have been spent, the government wouldn't be able to get it back. That dissenting opinion really says what's going on here and that the court should have acted. It will get back to the court once it has worked its way through the lower courts, and then we will get a substantive decision.
Are there other tools that this administration could use to address the debt that wouldn't generate more legal action?
No, you know, the left is, unfortunately, and Democrats are filing lawsuits against almost every action. And one of the problems we have, look, you know, we have seen the work of the swamp, the huge number of career civil servants who did everything they can to resist any change in policies, to resist the Trump White House. But unfortunately, we have the same situation in our judicial system. Joe Biden, before he left office, Alan, got more judges nominated and confirmed to the federal courts than any president in U.S. history. He beat Trump by one. And the whole reason for that was to put in very leftist judges who would help liberals in this fight against the Trump administration. And I will tell you, the folks that got confirmed, the people who are now on the courts, like this judge in Manhattan, they are the most ideologically left radicals that have ever sat in the U.S. judicial system.
Well, Hans, please stay with us for another segment. We need to take a break where interested viewers can jump in on our discussion with an email. You can send them to comments@alanjacksonnow.com. We'll be right back. We're back now with Hans von Spakovsky. He's the Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. We're talking about the efforts by liberal leaders to try to use the law to stop a lot of what President Trump is trying to accomplish. Some of the veteran market experts are warning that we could all be in trouble in the coming years if the deficit isn't addressed, and soon. There's U.S. debt and there's weak spots globally. What are you hearing, and do any of the legal arguments cover the debt case that's being made globally?
No, you know, as you saw from the clip that you all played, Democrats in particular in the Senate and in the House, they are against any kind of cuts of any kind. And I think that what, you know, annoys them the most is the transparency that DOGE has brought forward. Look, we've seen a list that the White House and DOGE has produced of the projects that USAID was giving money for in foreign countries, and they are some of the most bizarre, unbelievably, can I use the word stupid, projects that I have ever seen. And that's the kind of spending that does not need to be happening. They're also complaining, as you know, about federal employees being let go. The federal government has almost 2.5 million employees. More employees than a lot of some our states have population. And they are only so far talking about a relatively small number of employees that have been let go. Frankly, I would hope they would let even more people go from the federal government because it's just way too big. But you just aren't hearing that from those who are opposed to this. They don't want any government spending cut, and they just seem unconcerned about this huge deficit and this huge debt, which eventually could financially ruin the country.
Well, as you've seen, the arguments by the left go far beyond the law. The anchor of CBS's Face the Nation tried to make a case against Vice President J.D. Vance. The vice president had spoken up about the efforts of censorship in Europe, and Margaret Brennan took the opposite side, suggesting that free speech in Europe is dangerous because in Nazi Germany, free speech was weaponized to conduct genocide. Listen to how the vice president put it.
In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Do you have any idea where that CBS anchor was coming from when she said that free speech was weaponized to conduct genocide, other than just try to stir up her listeners with another lie?
Alan, I felt like what Justice Alito said in his dissent in that other case we were just, I was just stunned at her historical ignorance. I think she fails to be able to distinguish between propaganda and free speech, which, you know, I think is a problem with some folks on her side of the media equation. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. The moment the Nazis took control in 1933, they basically got rid of free speech, which had been guaranteed in the German Constitution. And in fact, the first concentration camp was opened in 1933. And who did they put in it? They started rounding up all their political opponents, anyone who spoke out against the regime. And her idea that free speech was present and was used, no. They took control of the radios, the stations, they took control of the newspapers, and yeah, they used government propaganda to further the idea of genocide and the Holocaust, but it was not because of free speech. Free speech was totally ended when the Nazis came in. And just the fact that Margaret Brennan is so ignorant of history is just stunning.
You know, I would have thought by now that the Democrats would slow down their efforts to use the judiciary to try to slow down President Trump. They tried it for the better part of 2 years, and the majority of the American public saw it for what it is and reelected him. These are woke judges, and it looks to those of us who are not part of the legal system that they pay equal attention to the politics of the country as they do to the law. What do you think?
No, I think common sense is prevailing. And let me tell you, the de-weaponization of the Justice Department, that is occurring right now. Just recently, the department started dismissing some of the meritless, frivolous lawsuits that have been filed by the Biden administration, one of which, for example, down in Cobb County, Georgia, would have required the fire department there to set up a racial quota system for the hiring of firefighters. And fortunately, that case was not concluded when the Trump administration took over, and they just dismissed that lawsuit. And they are doing that with many other suits too. So I think the American people are actually going to see a lot of benefits from the changes there. That doesn't stop the warfare, lawfare of the left, but when those cases start finally reaching the Supreme Court, I think the left, will see huge setbacks in their lawfare.
Well, Hans, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure, thanks for having me.
You know, we'd like to have you back because I'm pretty sure we haven't heard the last of this.
That's true.
When we come back, some thoughts of my own about dealing with this sort of political interference. You know, I've heard it a lot since the election. where people come up to me and have said they were tired of the elections, tired of the bickering and the back and forth between family and friends. They say, we've had the election. Let's let the elected officials go fix the problem. I just want to go back to my life. I want to stop paying attention. It's somebody else's problem. Let them fix it. Well, that thought process, I believe, is very deeply misguided. We're living in a season where the truth is still not celebrated widely. I believe we're going to have to endure, to walk through and overcome a season of confusion with some chaos and disruption tossed in for good measure, because the people that initiated all of this don't want to see the momentum of destruction disrupted. Years ago, chaos and confusion arose with violent protest on our streets, with lawlessness left unchecked. Well, now it seems the strategy is to propagate chaos and confusion in our court system through lawfare, where the will of the people and the initiatives they voted for get stifled by individual judges. This really shouldn't surprise us. The truth is, nobody in Washington, D.C. is going to bring a lasting solution to our problems. We've had misguided hopes. Lasting solutions begin in the character that is formed around our kitchen tables, and the men and women we decide to be, and the discipline that we bring to our children, and how we want our communities to look. 2 Timothy 2, verse 3, this is not a new problem. Paul said to Timothy, endure hardship with us like a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No one serving as a soldier gets involved in civilian affairs. He wants to please his commanding officer. Well, as Christ followers, consider what will be said of us. Are we willing to endure hardship, even loss, to protect the freedoms of our children and our grandchildren? Yes, we may face some disapproval, rejection, or adversity for confronting evil, but the consequences for everyone will be far greater if we hide and don't share God's truth. If we're going to see the name of Jesus exalted in our schools, on our college campuses, if we're going to do business with integrity again, if we're going to come back to our right mind and not be confused about male and female, it will be because the Church of Jesus Christ has the courage to endure the hardship of presenting the truth into our culture. If we'll do that, I promise you there are more reasons for hope than despair. Well, I'll be back with your emails in just a moment. Stay with us. Thank you for taking the time to send us your emails. Your thoughts and opinions are important to us. Raymond C. from Midlothian, Texas, said, it used to bother me when drivers would get on my bumper. Now I have a Jesus is Lord sticker and I feel like I'm spreading the gospel. I like the way you think, Raymond. There are thousands of those magnets across our country now. Maybe it'll clean up driving in our nation. That would be a win. James N. wrote, I watch your videos of preaching as often as possible, and this program as well. Your Now program is fantastically telling current, honest news, which media has not done in years. Keep up the great program. Well, James, I like the idea that you think it's fantastic. It is an opportunity. The truth is necessary if we are going to navigate what's before us. I think we are all a bit saddened that the legacy media has failed to uphold that assignment. But God is opening new doors and new voices, and we're very grateful to be a very small part of that. Let's all keep telling the truth. It'll bring good things to us. And finally, a viewer watching the YouTube episode with Eric Eggers made this comment. Outstanding guest tonight, Pastor Allen, and I too wish your show was longer. Eric Eggers is a very informative friend to the program. For a longer program, you'll need to pray. We'll need some permission from the networks and the resources to make that happen. I trust in God's time, He'll work out those details. If you missed the live broadcast, let me remind you that you can go to YouTube. We've got a channel there. You can see the programs at your leisure every evening. If you go, be sure to like and subscribe it. It will help us grow the audience and perhaps make a bigger impact. If you haven't yet, take a moment to send your email to comments@allenjacksonnow.com. Your feedback and your questions, they do a lot to shape this show. I'm Alan Jackson. You have a wonderful evening.